All right, so we have this weirdly small walk-in closet in one of the bedrooms in our house. And honestly, it's almost exactly the size of a sheet of plywood. So today I'm going to try and get a little creative and make this small walk-in closet feel like a big walk-in closet. Let's see how it goes. All right, so I think for this video, I want to do something a little bit different. I actually already have a cut of the video done, and I want to kind of just watch it and commentate as the video goes along, kind of watch it with you guys. I figure it might be kind of fun, maybe give a little more insight. If you hate this format or if you love it, let me know. Just kind of an experiment. So let's go ahead and get into it. All right, so I'm building this closet obviously out of plywood. It's all oak veneered plywood, which makes it much easier to build large cabinets, things like that. There's a lot of just cutting down sheets into rectangles. But here we have the shape of the closet that I'm building in. It's essentially the size of a sheet of plywood, funny enough. And you can see here that it's not quite big enough to put storage on both sides. So what I'm doing is basically having this area for walking, this area for storage. And the closet has a few weird things. There's this window down at one end, which doesn't make it easy to build in. And then also the door opens inward, which creates some dead space as well. This closet was a result of remodeling a bathroom, and our contractor slash designer we ended up with kind of a weird space. And so that's why I'm having to come up with something a little more interesting, which you can see here. I have a few different versions I came up with, and I finally landed on this one. I feel like it gives us the most space for hanging stuff, as well as some drawer space. Hopefully it utilizes the little bit of closet space we have the best I can. So I've got all my parts cut, and what I decided to do was build it in 2 cabinet sections so that when I do the install, that center area can kind of be my fudging room, and I can cut the top panel and that bottom panel to whatever size I need. And then I also decided to make the bottom cabinets in this configuration. I'm not sure it was a great decision. It created a few challenges, but it also was, as you can see, super easy to make these boxes. So I put them together with pocket holes, as you can see, and then the outside panels right here will just get connected to those. But here I'm cutting the dado for the upper shelves. And what I did was I clamped them back to back, and that allows the dado on both panels to be perfectly in line with each other. And I'm just using a spiral, probably downcut bit in my router. Take a few passes to get a nice clean dado. And once that's done, I can attach those panels to those boxes that I had initially made. So just clamp them in place, check everything's square and good to go, and I can go ahead and pre-drill and screw those into place. A lot of this project was just cutting varying sizes of rectangles out of plywood and sticking them together. So it's not super interesting work, but I think the end result is not bad considering what goes into it. So here I'm just attaching the other side. So I have my 2 cabinets sub-assemblies, and I'm measuring for the upper shelf, which is basically my opening plus the depth of the dados on both sides. So I can cut those shelves to length and then set up the saw to cut the tongue to fit into the dado, which is just about an 1/8 inch off of each side. I can use a little test scrap there to make sure everything was fitting right. And I could actually cut them onto my actual shelves. And you can see that the saw cut wasn't very clean. So one more cut on the other direction and cleaned everything up, and then I could glue them into place. Something's funny. I don't know. So now we get into edge banding, and there was a lot of edge banding in this project. So I just cut 1/8" thick strips of solid oak. First milled it to just over 3/4 of an inch, so there's a little bit of a overhang on both sides. Then just glue and a lot of blue tape to hold everything down, kind of checking if there's any gaps. And once it's all dry, I can pull off that tape and get ready to trim it flush with the plywood. And I just use a router and a flush trim bit. It can be a little tricky using a big router on a thin edge like that, but I've kind of learned to balance it pretty well, and it works out. So now I can get started on the toe kick, and you can see there that I needed that front corner to be a mitered corner so that there was no plywood edge showing. So pretty easily can just cut a couple bevels onto the ends of the two front pieces for the toe kick and cut them to length here. Then I can get ready to glue them up. So I only mitered that front corner, and everything else was done, just as normal with glue and screws. But I made sure to get that front corner looking pretty good. So I have my square there, and I'm using tape to hold it right at 90 degrees. And after the glue dried, it looked just about perfect. That's all I can ask for, is perfection. So here I'm just finishing up the toe kick. You can see I'm just gluing and screwing everything. It was fairly sloppy, but you won't see any of this ever because it's going underneath the cabinets, so it doesn't really matter. And now with all that stuff done, I could get started on some of the other smaller details. And here I'm starting on the hanging rods. And so I cut, I think they were inch and a half square lengths of solid white oak. And I'm using this 3/4 inch radius round over bit to then round over each corner to create a large dowel, essentially. And because 3/4 inch radius is halfway up the inch and a half square stock, you can see I made pretty much perfectly round hanging rods. They just need a little bit of sanding after the fact, and they were looking pretty good. So with that, I could then work on the actual hanging bracket for those rods, and I used our CNC machine just because it was simple and fast. It's not this fast because this is in fast motion, but it's still pretty fast. So here I'm attaching those brackets, and what actually happened was I used too thin of stock, so I had to grind down the screws so that when I screwed them into place, the screws didn't push through the outside of the plywood. So that was a oversight, added a little bit of work. Also, I don't love that you can see the screws. I probably should have designed these a little bit differently so that the screw maybe was hidden behind the rod, which I think is how, if I were to buy these, that's kind of how they're designed. But again, that was an oversight, and just live with it. It's going in my house after all. I'll just have to look at it every day and be annoyed by it. So now I can get started on the drawers, and here I'm just measuring for the size of drawer boxes I need. And I can start cutting up some 1/2 inch thick Baltic birch plywood. Here you can see I have 4 drawers on each side, 2 different depths, which 8 drawers, 4 drawer sides per means for a lot of drawer parts. So it's just a lot of cutting to width, cutting to length, over and over again. As you can see, I wish I worked that fast in real life. So here's all my drawer parts for the 8 drawers. Once I had those all cut, I can then get ready to cut basically the drawer box joinery, and I use kind of a rabbet locking joint on the corners of my drawer boxes. So here I'm cutting the rabbet, which goes onto the drawer side parts. And what that does is kind of create a nice smooth drawer side and a pretty strong drawer box. And you can see the little parts flying off perfectly into the trash can. Work smarter, not harder, I think is how that saying goes. Now I cut a groove around all the drawer box sides for the drawer bottoms, which again is a simple task, but very repetitive and tedious. I think each drawer side needed 2 passes, so it was a lot of cutting on the table saw. And then now I can just cut the drawer bottoms to size. I think this was 1/4 inch plywood. So here I'm just rough cutting them, and then I think I stacked them together here and cut them all to length together because they were too wide for my crosscut sled. So by stacking them together, clamping them, I can just do 1 pass with my track saw and have them all perfectly the same length. And then here I'm just cutting them to width. And the nice thing with this was every drawer bottom was the exact same size for every drawer. So once I had it figured out, it was fairly easy to do all of them. And I can finally assemble all the drawer boxes, just brad nails and some glue. So here I'm getting ready to use the Bloom undermount drawer slide hardware, which can be a little tricky to do. There's kind of a few steps to get them right. I actually have a video about using these on my old channel I made a few years ago, which goes into way more detail. I'll put a link to that in the description if you're interested in using these. They're great drawer slides, a little finicky to get just right, but once they're working, they work good. You can see here I get that first drawer box in place, then just grab a spacer block and use that to put in the subsequent drawer slide, and then I can just kind of work my way up until I have all of them in place, and that seems to work pretty well. And also, I want to take a minute to thank Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. Both Chris and I have been using Squarespace to build and maintain our websites for years now, and honestly, it's one of the best choices we made when starting our businesses. At the time, I had no idea what I needed to do to build a website, but Squarespace makes it super easy to get up and running with plenty of professional looking templates to choose from, as well as making things like purchasing domains really simple. Squarespace also has plenty of e-commerce tools to help you grow your business. Things like inventory management, a simple and secure checkout process, and unlimited products allow us to easily manage online transactions and not get bogged down with mundane tasks so that we can devote more time to doing the things we enjoy, like making a custom closet. So if you're thinking about starting a website, or even if you already have one, go check out Squarespace to see if it might be a better option for you. Head over to squarespace.com/4eyes for a free trial. Then when you're ready to launch, use the offer code 4eyes to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. All right, thanks Squarespace. Now let's get back to the build. So now that I have the drawer boxes in place, I can work on the drawer fronts. And again, I'm using plywood for this. I kind of debated using solid wood for the drawer fronts because again, using plywood, I'd have to edge band all the drawer fronts, but the trade-off to using solid wood and having to potentially mill and glue up panels, it seemed fairly even with edge banding everything. So to keep with a consistent look with the rest of the cabinets, I used plywood, and I think it turned out pretty good. So here I'm just cutting everything to size. I basically make 2 panels that fit the openings over the drawer boxes, and from those I cut the 8 drawer fronts. I have 2 big ones and 2 smaller ones on each side, so 4 of each size. Then once again I can get to edge banding, and at this point I've edge banded more than I care to in any one project, but you got to do what you got to do. So same old thing, just some glue, some blue tape, and we're looking good on all of those. You can see here I glued the edge banding all the way around before taking all the tape off and trimming it. And so for these, I use the router table to trim the edge banding, and you can see here I'm actually doing a climb cut with the router. Just got way less tear out, and there was less chance for huge issues, and the climb cut wasn't that big of a deal because it wasn't taking off much at any one time. So here I'm just pre-drilling to attach the drawer fronts, and I get that first one on. Then I can use a 16th inch spacer, set the next drawer front in place, clamp it, and then drive home those screws and just work my way up, and you can get all the drawer boxes in and everything's nicely spaced and even, looks good. So there's that first one, and then I do the same thing for the next two, and there we go. Looking pretty good. So one of the last little things to do with the drawer fronts was I bought these simple pulls. They just go over the top of the drawer fronts, and I cut a tiny little recess. They were pretty thin. They were actually very cheap drawer pulls, so thin metal, but I cut a little recess so they sit flush with the top of the drawer, then a couple screws to put them in place. They look good, but I think I would go with a more expensive drawer pull if I were to do this again. Then obviously a bunch of sanding, and I could spray some finish. I used a water-based polyurethane, which is easiest for something like this, and it comes out looking pretty good, especially for big cabinets and things. It just makes sense to spray it. So I actually got everything kind of dry assembled in the shop so we could take some pictures and work out everything. I made this top panel off camera because you don't need to see me make another panel and edge band it, but this top panel, I attached it just to the left side cabinet so that when I take it and actually install it in my house, I can trim the right side and trim everything to fit, and then I'll attach everything in place. So I'm going to cut to us actually installing it, and you'll see some finished shots of it in its final place. Hopefully it all works and looks good. All right, let's do it.
Oh wait, will it fit under a doorway?
I think we can get through there.
Yeah. Okay. Nope.
All right, okay.
Yep.
I had thought about this, but I just figured, okay, we'll figure it out when we, but yeah, like the top panel needs to be screwed in, and if we only have a few inches to work with, it's gonna be difficult. So, that's not on the toe kick. That's enough room, especially with that 90-degree thing to do it.
Okay.
Let's get this one also on the toe kick, and then we'll figure out the door, how because I might have to trim the middle stuff.
Okay.
But let's get this on here and see what we're.
If you want to stand there, I can push, and then you tell me like when to stop. And...
Yeah, push it a little bit. I mean, yeah, I don't want to honestly go much closer than this.
Okay. So now, you'll cut everything to 20.
Yeah, I'll cut everything to 20, and then we'll just push them together to fit that.
Mm-hmm.
You're even on that side?
Yeah, I'm even here. It looks like you're... I can't tell, actually, from where I'm at.
I think I'm dead nuts.
A great cut. Wait, what do you mean?
Well, because right now the top panel is long.
Oh, like it's too long to even measure?
But that's okay. We can put it basically upside down. We'll flush it up to here, and then I'll just strike the line on this side.
So flush it up on my side?
Yeah. Look at this.
Although we can't find that panel.
We don't need a spoil board. We just,
we just go right into the grass. Cut a line into the...
I can mow the lawn while I'm
I know.
here. Come here.
Good thing we're skinny. But I can. Felt like it sucked into something. What was that?
Well, lost the bit.
Where'd it?
Just kept going with your hand.
See if I can hand tighten the screws.
You're like the John Henry of Spacs.
I'll race you. Is it under?
Yeah. Ready?
Mm-hmm. I don't think it's gonna tip over.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, so there it is. This was a interesting and tough project. Honestly, I don't even know if there was an ideal outcome, but I did what I could with the space, and I'm pretty happy with the result. It will be useful and will allow us to utilize this strange sized walk-in closet the best we can. And you might have noticed in some of the renderings, there were shelves in this corner. I still plan to put those in, but they're gonna have to go in the future. Just ran out of time at this point. But for the most part, this closet's done and we're gonna start using it. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this one and see you in the next.